All right, so I actually wrote a speech here, so I'm going to read off of this prompt. Basically, I wanted to say good evening, everybody. I wanted to first thank Chris and everybody to let everybody know that I appreciate everything that Chris does for the court reporting community. So thank you, Chris. Thank you, everybody, for building this platform to allow our voices to be heard. So when Chris first brought this to my attention, I honestly felt honored that he would even consider me as a speaker. I honestly accepted the invitation without thinking. My one semester of public speaking, I think finally was going to pay off, yes. So fun fact, for one of my first assignments in the class, I actually went out and purchased a CD that had the Pokemon theme song. We had to essentially find a memorable way to have an introduction. So that was my memorable way to have an introduction. That should also tell you something a little bit about how long ago the class was and possibly how young or old I am. So continuing on, I was honored and accepted the invitation without thinking. It was only about a week afterwards, I suddenly thought to myself, oh crap, what did I get myself into? Knock on wood, I honestly have not been exposed to too much racism or xenophobia in my life. So what could I really contribute to this conversation? So I had to think, what could I say? What should I say? And it finally dawned on me what I really should talk about is my name. So it was funny that with the introduction, that my name was one of the first things that came up. So some of you may know my name is, of course, Tak Wong. In Cantonese, my full name is Wong Duckwing. So my name literally translates to virtue and honor. So not a bad name. Good job, mom and dad. But up until 2 years ago, I actually never really used my name except for in legal documents. Why? I don't know. The interesting story about that is that when I immigrated with my parents to the United States when I was 5, my mom gave me a choice of an American name to use. So I could either choose between Edward or David. Not knowing any better, I just chose David. So up until 2 or 3 years ago, everybody that I met knew me as David. Uh, Even at an early age, I guess my parents did know about racism. I think it was easier to assimilate into culture and not cause any waves. I mean, why be ridiculed for a name? Why assume additional conflict? For the longest time, I wasn't necessarily embarrassed to use my name. I just never decided to use it because it was just more convenient to tell people my name was David. It wasn't only until recently that I decided to embrace my legal name. So obviously now everybody knows me as Tak Wong. So reflecting back, I came to the realization that I was probably embarrassed about my name. I mean, think back, it's trivial. I shouldn't have to be afraid of acceptance. I shouldn't have to worry about assimilation. I mean, there's so many unique names out there in the world now. I mean, obviously, X Ash A12, Elon Musk's child. Um, Definitely a unique name. So explaining my name to people now is actually a conversation starter. It's an easy way for people to remember my name. It's actually a source of pride. So another quick story is that my mom grew up in South Korea. I remember her packing some kimbap for lunch at a very early age for me. So this relates very closely to the story. I was actually embarrassed about eating kimbap because obviously a classmate was very um, not approving of the food. Obviously, he didn't know exactly what it was. And knowing me, I was like, everybody knew kimbap, right? Everybody knew what it was. So did I finish eating it? No, I actually ended up just throwing it away. Again, in my opinion, it was easier to assimilate into the culture and not cause any waves. So this ultimately brings me to the final point. Why do people hate? One of the easiest and demeaning things people are saying in anger now, of course, everybody probably is hearing this, is go back to your country. I know many people of many ethnicities have heard that line, so it's just not specific to one ethnicity. But if you think about it, what would that really even accomplish? In my opinion, people always want to do things that are easier in life. Over the past year, We've seen a drastic rise, obviously, in hate crimes against Asian Americans. Many of this is caused by the pandemic and the belief that the virus originated in China. So somehow Asian Americans in the States had a direct contact with the virus, even though we didn't. Obviously, that's not acceptable. So obviously, we need to be able to stand together as a nation, condemn these acts of violence. Xenophobia and hate have no place in our society. It's easier to hate. You do not have to think about hate. You simply have to follow a preconceived notion that something is bad. We know that people are frustrated. We know people want to vent. We know people are projecting their anger towards other things that have no correlation. Why? Just because it's easy. So instead, I think we want to be able to find ways to be more inclusive and welcoming for all people, regardless of race or ethnicity. We can't be embarrassed like I was, nor hope that we have to assimilate into a culture. Instead, let's go ahead and I believe we should work to recognize contributions that all Americans have made to our country. Asian Americans, we should be proud of the accomplishments, from helping build the nation's railroads to fighting for our freedom. Asian Americans obviously have played an important role in shaping our nation. So I believe we should come together and stand up against hate and xenophobia and work towards a brighter future where people will not have to be afraid and where people are treated with respect and dignity.